Really? Do you think you should wear those glasses on your head? And oh God, you got that dog on the sofa again. I think you should, it looks really unprofessional. You should really keep the dogs out. And that plant behind you, it looks like it's growing at the top of your head. And the lighting, oh, it's really dark. It looks quite dismal there. And oh, you are looking a bit old. There it is, my inner critic out in the open. Now, one of the most damaging and destructive manifestations of schemas is the relentless inner voice that is constantly commenting on everything that you do or you say. So each schema has its own voice, and depending on which schemas you have, your voice could be the voice of unrelenting standards, which is, oh, that could be much better. You haven't done enough. You need to do more. Is that all you can do today? You need to do more. That's not up to standard at all. Or it could be approval seeking. Oh, you probably upset that person, and oh God, what you said was really boring. They're probably thinking that you're an idiot or that you're really stupid. You just came across as unbelievably blah blah blah. Or the self-sacrifice schema, which is like, oh, you're so selfish. You should just say yes when people ask you to do something. That's the kind thing to do. You want to be a kind person, don't you? Then you need to stop thinking about yourself and put others first. Or it could be insufficient limits and self-control, which, first of all, is like a bait and switch. It'll say to you, oh, go on, just have that extra piece of cake. Go on, one drink won't matter. Or, oh, don't go to the gym today. You deserve a rest. And then when you give in to that voice, it comes back at you with, oh my goodness, I can't believe you ate that. What is wrong with you? You are so weak. You're pathetic. You can't stick to anything. Or it's the failure schema, which will come at you with, oh, everybody else is further along in life than you are. You're really behind. You really need to start, stepping up, getting a grip. But, you're really probably not as good as anybody else. You're probably going to fail again, just like you failed because you are such a failure. So I don't know what kind of voice that you have, but no doubt you will recognize this endless chatter of the inner critic. And again, depending on the degree of the chatters, for some of us, it can just be overwhelming, non-stop, exhausting. It's like someone living in your head, cracking a whip constantly, just beating you up. And obviously, as you can imagine, the consequences of this emotionally are devastating. We can end up with constant anxiety if you know that, oh, you said this wrong, you said that wrong, you're never going to amount to anything. Or it can, generate a lot of shame, like, oh, you're so worthless. Did you see the way that that person was looking at you? They're obviously disgusted by you. So you can just end up collapsing under the weight of these voices. Now, a good thing to do at this point of watching the video is to just take a minute and think about your own inner critic. Now, often we don't even realize that this is a voice in our head. It's just part of our natural, way of being, where we've got this relentless task driver, taking up space rent free in our head, judging everything that we do, commenting on everything we do. And going back to the consequences, obviously, anxiety, depression. I mean, how on earth can you feel any kind of joy, hope, or inspiration when you've got this person constantly telling you how bad you are, or how bad your life is, or how there is no hope for the future? So not only is it anxiety and depression, but also, of course, low self-esteem. You're not going to be feeling good about yourself if you've got this voice going on in your head. Now, the first step to working with this inner critic is to notice it, is to notice what is your inner critic telling you. Make notes, just observe yourself going throughout your day, noticing when this voice starts activating and criticizing you in some way, and then notice the effect that it has on you. So not only emotionally does it affect us, but also if you think about anything in life, every aspect of our life can be affected by it. We don't take risks. We don't move forward. We might not, for example, we don't like the job we're in, but we're like, oh, the inner voice goes, oh, well, you're not going to get another one. The market's really bad. You're just going to have to stay where you are because, and also nobody's going to really want you. You don't have enough experience. They're going to discover that you're an imposter. So we end up missing a lot of opportunities. Now, obviously, being human, I have my own inner critic. It's far, far reduced now from what it was. But I remember when I first started building my website, and I don't know whether you've been on my website, but I have a lot of videos of each schema on there. And I think I did these back in 2018. And oh my goodness, it it took me forever to first start making these videos. So I'd make a video and then I'd go, oh no, that sounds a little bit too scientific, or oh, that sounds a little bit, dumbed down, or just imagining this audience watching it, criticizing it. And there was a point where I was making videos and where I lived at the time, there was a lot of cockerels outside. And I'd be talking away on the video, then this cockerel would start crowing. But oh, I can't have a cockerel in the video. Oh, my dog would get up and walk. Oh, I can't have a dog walking in the background. And I was just stuck because of this constant voice. And I started really working on this and for myself. And I had the quote, better done than perfect, because it is excruciating. Because obviously the inner critic is very much connected to procrastination. Anyway, I was so at the point of like, oh God, this is never going to happen. The lighting wasn't right, or it was relentless. Anyway, one night when I was going to sleep, it's about 11 o'clock at night, and I just thought, F it, just gonna do them. I don't care. I don't care anymore. I don't care as long as, it was like they're good enough, as long as it's good enough. So I got up and I did 5 in a row, one after the other. There were cockerels in them. I mean, if you watch the videos there, I mean, they're good enough is what I'm going to say. So the point is we all have this inner critic. And what we need to be able to do is recognize it as not ourselves and not the truth. So it really helped me to understand where this inner critic came from, and to understand that it's actually misguided because it's actually trying to protect us. So, I've talked a little bit about where different schemas come from, but essentially the inner critic is develops us when we're children. And what it's trying to do is saying to us, this is what you need to do to be accepted by your tribe, so your family of origin, your peers when you're growing up. You need to do X, Y, Z in order to be accepted, which means you won't be thrown out of the tribe and you will not die. So it observes, the inner critic is basically the absorption of the messages that we directly receive as children or that we interpret. So, for example, if you were raised in a home where you only got praised for achievement, for kind of top marks or whatever. I mean, say you get a B, they're like, why didn't you get an A? What was wrong? Then you are constantly feeling that you're going to be kicked out of the tribe because the young emotional brain is just constantly looking for acceptance and approval in order to survive. So if you have that kind of childhood where you're only praised for top achievement, then you're going to be constantly in fear of not being perfect. And this is where perfectionism comes in. Or if you are raised in a family where you're not allowed to express yourself, or you're ridiculed for something, then it's going to be like the inner critic develops, going, what happens when you express yourself? People ridicule you. Now, obviously, these schemas develop in families that are not very emotionally stable, or there is some kind of emotional dysfunction, or as is normal in the UK, especially, we grow up kind of making fun of each other all the time. But some of these things really land with us and then generate these inner critics. So the inner critic, it can help to remember two things. One, it is not your voice. And two, it is trying to protect you. It's just maladaptive now. When we're younger and we're trying to survive emotionally in our families of origin or in our schools or whatever, then the inner critic is just trying to keep us in line based on other people's expectations or our perceived expectations. So how do we actually start working with it? So the inner critic, obviously, is their thoughts. They're generated from deep beliefs about ourselves and the world and how we need to be in the world in order to be accepted, approved of, and therefore survive. So we really need to work on rewiring these thoughts. Now, there's a lot of kind of advice about the inner critic, which I don't actually agree with. But the advice is that you challenge the inner critic. So when the inner critic, starts up going, oh my, you're useless, you're a failure, you're an idiot, that we come back with our, wiser self, and we challenge that inner critic and we go, no, I'm not. I've done this, I've done that. And the inner critic comes, oh, well, that doesn't matter. So the problem with challenging the inner critic is that we are actively engaging with it. And the thing is with thoughts thrive and survive on fuel. And that fuel is energy and attention. So if we are bringing attention and energy to a thought by focusing on it and engaging with it, we are just fueling it and making it stronger. So what we actually want to do with unhelpful thoughts is let them atrophy. We want them not to be used. We don't want to go down those pathways with energy and attention. We want to divert energy away. We want to withdraw our energy from the critic. So ideally, once you recognize that you have these thoughts and you start to observe them, that actually builds up a part of the prefrontal cortex, which allows us to develop the observer skill, it's actually called mentalizing, which is the mind's ability to watch itself. So when we're really fused with the inner critic, what I mean by that is that we're not even aware that it's a separate part, that it's this voice that's developed. We just believe everything it says. We believe that we're useless, that we're a failure, that we can never get another job, that we just believe it. So actually starting to observe this inner critic allows us to create distance. And once we can separate from it, we can start to ignore it. So the best thing to do with the inner critic is to acknowledge it initially. There you go, telling me I'm this, that, and the other. And then we divert attention away from it. Now, it can be really helpful also to have alternative thoughts to the critic, which could be, we're not directly engaging with it, but what we're actually doing is saying something like, better, like I do, better done than perfect. It doesn't matter. I'm not listening. I'm not going to go there. So with my inner critic, with the videos that I was talking about, I just basically just kept saying to myself, better done than perfect. Better done than perfect. I'm just going to get them done. And I ignored it. It doesn't matter. Like I'm just looking at this plant in the back. Don't care anymore. It looks like it's growing out my head. Okay, it's all right. I just want to get this video done about the inner critic. So again, going back to how we work with it, accepting that this is very much part of the human condition, that the voices can be very, very strong, depending on how many schemas we had, depending on how difficult our childhood might have been, that they're not true, they're not helpful, and we can starve them by not paying attention to them. Some of my clients, they swipe them away, just as they come. It's like swipe, not listening to you, la 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 la, whatever, don't want to hear you, you're not helpful. And then we just have to push through the discomfort, because obviously, I'm just thinking of a specific example, you could be out and the inner critic starts telling you how awful you look, how boring you are, and it creates a lot of anxiety. So what we need to be able to do in those moments is try to turn our attention away. You could even say something like, there you go, telling me I'm useless, I'm not going to listen to you. And then you redirect. But actually starting to actively calm down the body really helps. So when you notice the inner critic starting up, swipe it away, you say something in replacement of it, and then you focus on your body. Because just a little bit of neuroscience here. You've heard me talk about the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. Now, they're also divided into left and right hemispheres, which you might have heard, around the place. The left hemisphere is very much analytical. This is where the kind of critic resides. It's analytical, it can be critical, it can be judgmental. Whereas the right prefrontal cortex is more about empathy and self-compassion, which is what we need instead of the inner critic. What we want, instead of a critical voice, we want an encouraging voice. And you can kind of look at it like two different parents. So you might have the critical parents that constantly tells you that's not good enough, do it again, you need to be this, you need to be that, you should do this, you should do that. And then the encouraging one that says, okay, well, maybe you've made some mistakes in the past, but what can you learn from them? It can be different this time. It's the encouraging voice. That's the kind of voice we want in our head. The one that is has a growth mindset, that doesn't keep relentlessly saying you can't change, this is bad, that's bad. So going back to the neuroscience, in times of heightened stress, the left prefrontal cortex, even though the prefrontal cortex does kind of go offline during stress, but before it goes offline, it becomes quite critical and it can become quite judgmental. So you might find that in times of struggle, you beat yourself up even more. So what we want to be able to do when we notice a critic, first of all, notice what it's doing to your body. You'll probably find yourself quite tense. Your shoulders are tense because you're going into a fight-flight state. So what we want to do is actively focus on our body. Breathe in, slow breathe in, just calming ourselves down. Try not to think anything, just, I'm okay, everything's okay. Calm yourself down, and then divert your attention. So in a nutshell, with the inner critic, what we want to be able to do is divert attention away from those thoughts and generate more compassion, self-compassion for ourselves. Now, obviously, this is not a quick fix. We can't just suddenly switch this off. It's been maybe decades, of deep wiring, but definitely just starting to be aware of it, reminding yourself that this is a developmental neuroplastic issue because of the childhood you had. You don't have to live with this for life. I mean, even if my inner critic starts up, I know what it's doing, and I can not respond to it or try to overcome it. Another way you can look at it is, the way we talk to ourselves sometimes. We wouldn't talk to our friends or family like that. We wouldn't talk to a child like that, but we are merciless with ourselves. So what we can also do is when we catch ourselves, talking to ourselves in this critical way, we can imagine that we're talking to a child. And what would we say to a child in that situation? Or what would you say to a friend in that situation? So we can slowly start to develop some self-compassion and empathy, for ourselves by, maybe writing in your journal. At the end of the day, you can have a self-criticism journal. Write down what you found yourself saying to yourself, and then imagine what you would like someone else to say to you, or what you would say to a child. And then try practicing saying this to yourself. This isn't about positive thinking at all. This is about trying to rewire thoughts and beliefs that in childhood kind of developed to protect us. They were adaptive to the circumstances, but now they are no longer useful. They're very maladaptive, very damaging, very destructive, and they will dictate, the trajectory of our lives. They will cause, they can cause serious mental health issues as well. So definitely one of the most destructive aspects of schemas is the inner critic.